His hand trembled holding her urn, and the next breath he took was laced with triumph. She chose me anyway. I stood at the cemetery's edge, the sun slanting through winter trees like muted spotlights. The urn was small, polished wood, engraved with her name. My hand hovered, wanting to touch it, but I froze when his silhouette turned camera's way. Marcus gripped the urn tight, as if it were proof. Glossy photo pixels flashed around us. A smile curved his lips, gentle, triumphant, as if he'd just won something monumental. The camera clicked again. He looked straight into the lens. She chose me anyway, he whispered, barely audible but enough to shatter me. Chose him, over me, over our vows, over truth. The phrase sounded like a confession draped in a declaration. I wasn't sure if the photographers had captured it. Probably. Everyone there, the ministers, the mourners, searched my face for grief. But inside, grief twisted into rage. How dare he make her death about him? He tucked the urn under his jacket, patted its curve like a consolation prize. I saw guests nod, whisper approval. Strong man, brave son. And I swallowed bile. The lie was being served in a velvet-lined box. My body trembled. I wanted to rip the cameras, break their testimonies. He was rewriting her end as his own performance. He had turned her death, my sister's death, into a stage, and everyone was clapping. The light slid behind clouds. A hush stretched across the lawn. The urn seemed to glow in his arms. But I felt invisible, like the missing chord in a symphony that everyone else heard. My breath caught. I remembered the last time he held me like that. With promise, not closure. With love, not arrogance. I remembered how his lips near mine once whispered, "Forever." Now he whispered the name of my dead sister, like a taunt. The priest stepped forward, clearing his throat. Cameras clicked narrower shots, hands folded, teardrops on cheeks. But my eyes locked with his. I mouthed, "Why?" He looked back, contained, composed, victorious, then turned and walked with the urn. I wanted to follow him, demand answers, push the camera out of his face. But my knees wouldn't move. I was anchored in disbelief, watching him carry her memory like a flag planted in his victory lap. People parted for him, like he was carrying something holy. I couldn't breathe, my lungs fighting to remember who I was. His words echoed. She chose me anyway, like blame, like celebration, like curse. He stopped at the casket. The lid rattled, opening, to receive the urn. I realized then it wasn't hers being laid to rest. It was everything she ever chose. I watched him place it, smoothly, deliberately, like setting a crown. The moment broke. Cameras caught every angle. He bowed his head. Teardrop? Or was it? I couldn't tell. But I knew what story he was telling. That her love, even in death, belonged to him. And I wasn't part of that story. My sister, had chosen me. For life. Not him. But with his words and smirk, he tried telling. A different truth. A polished lie for public consumption. That was the moment everything changed. Not for her, but for me. My sister Claire was the kind of person who turned rooms brighter just by walking in. She was bold, magnetic. People always noticed her first. I used to joke that we weren't born from the same womb, just borrowed by the same stars. Growing. Up, she was the sun, and I was the moon. Quieter, orbiting her light. And I didn't mind. I loved her. She protected me. We shared everything. Secrets, playlists, midnight snacks, heartbreaks. Until Marcus. I met Marcus first. A friend introduced us at an art exhibit. He stood there in a black coat, hands in pockets, asking me about shadows in a painting like they held answers to life. I felt seen. I felt chosen. Claire wasn't there that night. I remember telling her about him after. She raised an eyebrow, smiled, and said, "He sounds like trouble, with dimples." I laughed. I was already falling. That should have been a warning. Our first year was dreamy. Dinners, road trips, messy kisses in hallways. He met Claire a few months in. They clicked instantly. She called him Marcus Aurelius, teased his stoicism. He blushed. I told myself it was sibling energy. I needed to believe that. The three of us became a rhythm. Dinners together, game nights, family holidays. People would comment, "Your sister and your man get along so well." I smiled through it. Told myself this was healthy, mature. I trusted them both. Claire never crossed a line, at least not that I saw. But sometimes, when Marcus laughed a little harder at her jokes, or when she reached across him to grab something and lingered too long, I'd feel a shift, small, tectonic. He proposed a year later, in front of both our families. Claire recorded the whole thing. She cried, said she'd never seen me that happy. And I believed her, because in that moment, I was. Planning the wedding, Claire was my right hand, my maid of honor. She picked the wine, fixed the seating chart, calmed my nerves. I looked at her and thought, this is what loyalty looks like. I never imagined she'd carry my urn before me. Marcus and I got married on a foggy September morning. Claire gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry. "If you ever hurt her," she said to him, half joking, "I'll ruin you." He smiled, kissed my hand. The camera flashed. For a while, marriage was good. Not perfect, but warm. He kissed my shoulder in the mornings, left notes in my lunch. We made plans, babies, vacations, renovation dreams. Claire moved to a new apartment across town. Our triangle became quieter. Then Claire got sick, a cough that wouldn't go away. Weeks of fatigue, appointments, then the diagnosis, stage of 4. Everything stopped. I dropped everything. Marcus did too. We became her support system, her team, her shadow. She moved in with us. I slept beside her some nights when she was scared. Marcus cooked her meals. We took shifts. There were tears, laughter, pain. But mostly, there was love. Or so I thought. When she died, I thought I'd lost a part of myself. I didn't know I'd also lost the man holding my hand. The first time I felt it, I was carrying tea into Claire's room. She was thin by then, bones like porcelain under her skin. Marcus sat beside her, reading aloud from one of her favorite books. His voice was soft, softer than I'd ever heard. She smiled at him with eyes I hadn't seen in years, playful, young. I stood in the doorway unnoticed for several minutes. When he brushed her hair back gently, I dropped the mug. The crash broke the moment. They both jumped. He rushed to help. Me clean it, over-apologizing. Claire made a joke. "We're all too tired for drama, Liv." I forced a smile. Told myself it was stress. Intimacy forged by trauma. But something in me whispered, "Watch them." I started noticing patterns. Claire asking Marcus to stay when I was ready to take the night shift. His willingness, eagerness to remain. How his texts came slower to me, but he always answered her call, even from the shower. One night, I found her crying. She said she was scared to die alone. I climbed into bed with her, held her like I did when we were kids. She whispered, "I don't want to leave you. thought it was about death. I didn't realize it might have been about guilt. He took her to appointments I had planned to attend. Said it gave me rest. I thanked him. I was grateful. But I started feeling like the outsider in my own caregiving partnership, like their grief had merged into something more private. Once, I walked in on them holding hands in silence. No explanation, no context. Just two people, locked in something that didn't have a name yet. I said nothing. They dropped hands like children caught stealing. Claire's eyes stopped meeting mine when we were all together. Her laugh with me dimmed. I blamed the illness, told myself pain changes people. But it was me who was changing, becoming suspicious, cold, paranoid. Marcus started sleeping in the guest room more often. Claimed he was up late researching medications. I heard him crying one night. I stood outside the door, listening to a grief I wasn't allowed to comfort. A wall had grown between us. I started checking his phone. I hated myself for it. But I found nothing. No texts, no evidence. Just her name starred in his favorites. Just her Spotify playlists in his history. Just photos. Hundreds of her. Smiling. Sick. Soft. Claire gave him a necklace near the end. A silver chain with a tiny anchor. Said it was her way of thanking him for staying. I watched him put it on like a wedding band. He never took it off after that. She told me, "He's been everything." I thought she meant helpful. Now I wonder if she meant everything. The way she looked at him in those final weeks, like he was her last truth. And I, somehow, had become a supporting character. The night before she died, he sat beside her bed while I slept on the couch. When I woke up and walked in, they were both asleep. His hand was wrapped around hers. Mine was nowhere in sight. Something inside me cracked that morning. A fracture I didn't want to name yet, but I felt it. My husband was mourning her in a way that no brother-in-law ever should. Claire died on a Tuesday morning. The house was quiet, her breath barely there. Marcus and I sat on either side of her bed. I held one hand. He held the other. I whispered, "I love you." Again and again. She didn't answer, but her eyes opened one last time, just for him. After, the hospice nurse said, "It's rare." She waited. I thought she meant for me, but Marcus looked shaken, like he knew something deeper, something I couldn't understand yet. He kissed Claire's forehead like a lover saying goodbye. Not a brother-in-law. I wanted to scream, but the grief drowned me. I was too hollow to rage, too stunned to question. I told myself this wasn't betrayal. It couldn't be. Not now. Not with her body still warm. But something inside me shattered. The funeral planning was a blur. Marcus volunteered for everything. He spoke to the director, chose the urn, designed the obituary. I let him. I didn't have the strength. I didn't realize I was handing her memory over to the wrong person. On the day of the service, people came in waves. I stood near the door, greeting family. Marcus hovered near the altar, the urn on a pedestal beside him. I heard whispers. He took such good care of her. He was like a soulmate. That word hit me like a slap. Soulmate? My husband? My sister? I stood frozen as one of Claire's old friends hugged me and said, "She told me he was her person." My face stayed calm. Inside, I was unraveling. During the eulogy, Marcus took the mic. His voice was steady, strong. He spoke about Claire's light, her laughter, her bravery. Then he said, "She gave me a love I never expected." And the room exhaled like it was poetry. I nearly vomited. I waited for someone to flinch. No one did. His words washed over them like gospel. I I looked around, faces nodding, smiling, crying. I wanted to scream she was my sister, but I didn't. I sat down. I listened to my marriage crumble in applause. After the service, I found him holding the urn again, alone in the hallway. He was smiling just slightly, like someone satisfied with how the story was told. I asked him, "What did you mean back there?" He said, "The truth." I asked again, sharper this time. "Did you love her?" He didn't deny it, just said, "She chose me, in the end." I slapped him. My hand stung, his face barely moved. He just blinked slowly, as if I'd confirmed, something he always expected from me. That night I replayed every moment, every look, every laugh, every silent betrayal that had lived in our home. And then I opened Claire's journal. I shouldn't have, but I did. And on the second to last page, I found the words that killed me. If I hadn't met him through her, maybe. One word, maybe. A seed of treason, a whisper of truth. I folded the page, buried it under the drawer. My stomach turned. I felt betrayed not by one person, but two. That's when I realized grief wasn't the only thing I was burying that week. I stopped eating. Not on purpose. Food just lost meaning. My body felt like a container, empty, dry, shaking. I'd make tea, forget I made it, boil water, watch it go cold. The grief wasn't clean. It was tangled with betrayal. And I was drowning in it. The house still smelled like her. Lavender and eucalyptus. Her room was exactly how she left it. The bed unmade. Her mug half full. Her socks folded on the chair. I couldn't bring myself to touch anything. She had lived here, loved here, died here. With him. Marcus moved around like nothing had changed. Said we needed to move forward. Said we'd honor her by living. I stared at him like he was a stranger. How do you move forward from being replaced by your own blood? I cried in the shower until my legs gave out. Screamed into towels. Threw her journal across the room. It hit the wall and fell open to a blank page. The silence mocked me. The unwritten words she never got to leave behind. Zoe came over with soup, again. She held me while I broke down in her arms. When I told her about Marcus's words, she chose me anyway, she whispered, "What a narcissist." I nodded, but I wasn't sure if the pain was betrayal or just the death of a myth. I went through every photo of the three of us. The dinners, the birthdays, Claire between us, always smiling. And I couldn't tell anymore who was the third wheel. I started to wonder if I had been the extra, just the bridge between two people who had always looked past me. One night, I opened a drawer and found the anchor necklace Marcus wore. I held it in my palm, wondering if it had ever meant anything. To me. I pictured her giving it to him. I pictured him wearing it while sleeping in my bed. And I screamed. I shattered a glass, threw it at the wall like it could undo the past. The crash didn't help. Nothing did. Not the pills. Not the wine. Not even Ava, Claire's cat, curling beside me in bed, purring like she could heal me with sound. I tried asking Marcus for honesty. I begged, "Just tell me the truth. Did you love her more?" He sighed. It wasn't about more. It was different. That sentence broke me in ways I didn't know were possible. Different was worse than more. I left the house for 3 days. Stayed in a motel with peeling wallpaper and thin blankets. Watched old movies with static on the screen. I needed to disappear. Needed to not be the woman whose husband loved her dead sister. I imagined confronting Claire. What would I say? What could she even say back? That she didn't mean to? That she didn't want it to happen? That she was dying and wanted to feel something before the end? None of it would fix the hole. Every room felt like a crime scene. Every object, a clue. Every silence, a scream. I was unraveling, and he walked around like grief was a crown he wore better than me. I told him I was moving out. He said, "But she's gone." As if that erased what they did. As if love doesn't leave footprints even when the person is buried. He didn't understand. He never would. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay. Not for the house. Not for the memories. And definitely not for a man who carried her urn like a trophy. I returned home with one mission. Find the truth. Not the one he told in eulogies or whispered over urns, but the one hidden in silence, gestures, and files not meant for me. I started in Claire's room. Her laptop was still there. I opened it. No password. She'd always trusted me. The home screen held folders. Treatment plan, playlist, letters. My hands trembled. I opened letters. There were dozens. Some to Mom, some to me, one titled M. I hesitated. I clicked it. The letter wasn't romantic, but it wasn't innocent either. She wrote, "You made the pain disappear for moments. That was more than I ever expected. I don't know what we are, but I know what you meant to me." I stopped breathing. I read it twice, 3 times. It didn't name him, but it didn't have to. I knew. She signed it. "Thank you for staying." The same words she used the day she gave him the necklace. It was confirmation. Not explosive. Just undeniable. In her notes app, I found a short list. Last calls. Marcus. Liv. Mom. She called him before me. Not because she loved him more, but because she needed to say goodbye in a way I hadn't earned. I felt the sting in my teeth. Checked his old phone, the one he'd stopped using. Still logged in. Messages from Claire. Not romantic, but intimate. Comforting. Words like, "I feel safe when you're here," and "You see the parts I hide." I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Then I found the voicemail. From the night before she died. Her voice, weak but clear. "You held my hand, Marcus. You made this bearable. I need you to take care of her after I go. Please, even if she never knows." I sank to the floor. She hadn't stolen him. She'd depended on him. He hadn't claimed her in life. But in death, he'd rewritten their connection into something grander, romantic, maybe to cope, maybe to win. Walked into the kitchen. He was there, cooking, calm. I asked, "Why did you say she chose you?" He turned off the stove, took a breath, then said, "Because it made it easier to lose her." I stared. "So you made it harder for me." He didn't answer. He looked at me like a man who'd realized his confession had broken something too, sacred to fix. For the first time, he looked ashamed. That didn't mean I forgave him. I printed Claire's letter, framed it, not to honor their bond, but to remind myself the truth exists, even when buried, even when blurred by grief and performance. That night, I packed my bags. Slowly, calmly. No yelling. No final scene. Just truth between us, laid bare like bones in the sun. I looked at him once before leaving. He whispered, "I loved her." I replied, "I loved her more." I didn't plan revenge. Not at first. But silence wasn't enough anymore. He had built a narrative around grief that excluded me, then paraded it at her funeral. That required a correction, a truth louder than his whisper. I started with the eulogy. The video had been posted online by a distant cousin. Over 100,000 views. Comments like, What a beautiful love story. I wanted to vomit, but I didn't respond with rage. I responded with facts. I contacted the cousin, asked her to post a second video. Claire's voice, the voicemail, with context, her words, take care of her, even if she never knows. I made sure my face was in that video too. The world needed the whole story. I uploaded Claire's letter. No edits, just her handwriting, her words, her goodbye. The caption read, "She didn't choose him. She trusted him. There's a difference." The response, silence first. Then a storm. The post exploded. People took sides. Some pitied him. Most saw the manipulation. My inbox filled with women saying, "Thank you for not letting your grief be rewritten." And that's when I knew. Exposure isn't vengeance. It's clarity. Marcus reached out, begged me to take it down. "You're ruining her image," he said. I replied, "No, I'm restoring mine." He stopped calling after that. The silence was his real face. I wrote a piece for a grief and ethics journal, under my name. Titled it, "When Love is Claimed Without Consent." It resonated. People listened. I didn't use his name, I didn't have to. Truth doesn't need specifics to hit where it hurts. I moved, left the city, found a job at a nonprofit for women navigating complex grief. My pain became purpose, not performative, not public, just real, steady, quiet power. I boxed up the wedding album, burned the guest book, kept one photo, me and Claire at the beach, sunburned and laughing. That's who she was to me. That's who she still is. Not the woman in his story. The sister in mine. Months later, he showed up at a reading I gave. Stood in the back. Said nothing. I looked him in the eyes. Then kept reading. His presence didn't shake me. It confirmed everything. I had won the moment he lost the right to speak for her. I created a foundation in Claire's name. No romance, just action. Grants for terminal patients who wanted dignity, privacy, and peace. That was her real legacy, not the man who clung to her urn like a trophy. On the foundation website, under Why We Exist, I wrote, "Because no woman deserves to be claimed in death by the man she never chose in life." He picked up her ashes, like they were proof of something. But all he held was the weight of a lie. I wake up to quiet now. Not silence, but peace. The kind of quiet that doesn't hide secrets. The air in this new apartment smells like eucalyptus and ink. Claire would have teased me for the books stacked on the floor. She'd love this space. She'd love this version of me. There's a photo of us on my desk. Her in my scarf, me in her sunglasses. We look ridiculous and happy. That moment was real. Not posed, not claimed. Just two sisters being loud and alive. I keep it close. It reminds me who I was before the storm. I write more now. Not about him, not about grief, but about rebuilding. Women reach out, sisters, daughters, wives, each one carrying their own version of erasure. I tell them, "You're not a footnote. You're the author." On Claire's birthday, I baked her favorite pie, brought it to a support group I now lead. We lit a candle, shared stories. No one cried. We laughed. That was the miracle. Joy returned, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. I went back to the cemetery once. Just once. Brought flowers, stood before her stone, and I didn't think about him. Not once. Just her. I whispered, "I'm okay now." The wind picked up. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was just the truth settling. I no longer flinch when I hear his name. He faded, like a smudge in a beautiful painting. His story collapsed because it was never real. And mine? Mine kept growing, rooted in love, loss, and truth no one can take. He doesn't speak publicly anymore. Maybe he's ashamed. Maybe he's still pretending. But that's not my burden. I carried it long enough. I left it where it belonged. Back in the moment he smiled for the cameras and thought grief was his to perform. Claire wasn't his to claim. Not in life. Not in death. And I wasn't his victim. I was the witness who finally spoke. Sometimes I imagine her voice teasing me. You were always the quiet one. And I smile. Because I found my voice in the place where he tried to bury it. He thought she chose him, but I chose myself. And I lived. And I